In-depth journalism in the Memphis community, the Daily Memphian is of Memphis, not just in Memphis, and seeks to tell the stories of this city. TheDailyMemphian.com. Truth in place.
Production funding for Behind the Headlines is made possible in part by the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
A new tech hub, conditions at the jail, and much more tonight on Behind the Headlines. I'm Eric Barnes with the Daily Memphian. Thanks for joining us. I am joined this week by a roundtable of journalists talking about some of the biggest stories of the week. Catherine Burgess is with MLK 50. Thanks for being here again.
Thank you.
Mary Casciola is editorial director for the Daily Memphian. Thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
And Bill Dries is a reporter with the Daily Memphian. We'll start with the tech hub. Bill, we've done so many announcements over the years, and I mean, there's a lot of money behind it. It's a proposed project downtown. Let me do the basics. Proposed project downtown in what was going to be the Union Walk. It's right south of AutoZone Park, the big vacant, space there. 125,000 square foot innovation center, 200,000 square feet of retail space, 800-room hotel, 700 apartments, a big price tag. It's a Houston-based company, Legacy Power Capital. What's your take?
It's also kind of a new area for this that has come along in this age of artificial intelligence and data centers that we've become familiar with over the last year or so. The folks behind this insist it is not a data center. But grasping what the concept of this is, beyond folks who work with a lot of cloud computing like, let's say, St. Jude, let's say FedEx, would be able to do that there as opposed to having to have a center somewhere else.
Yeah. I mean, Mary, over the years, just the years of Daily Memphian, you were at the MBJ before that, back at the Flyer magazine.
Right.
There's sometimes these grand proposals. Not 100% of them get done, and it's always a trick. This one was, the people were in town. It was announced at the big annual chairman's luncheon and so on. But how do we approach that story when it's promised, but they're not digging holes yet or putting up steel?
I think we go ahead and we report it like we always do. Someone saying we are going to do this thing, and they have sort of the bona fides behind them. So we trust them, but we verify. And I will say, the chamber has a history of bringing these big announcements to their annual luncheon, which is always very exciting. We can look back to Electrolux in 2012-ish, I think, where, they had refrigerators and whatnot on the stage. Electrolux came to town. It was great. And then at some point, Electrolux left. And now I think that facility is now XAI. So,
like Blue Oval. We did a bunch of shows and wrote a lot about Blue Oval up in, at the, what was it called? The West Tennessee. It was the West Tennessee mega site. I can't remember. Now it's just called Blue Oval. They have slowed down a lot of the work there. Ford has paused a lot of work around the country, not just there.
Well, even with the site, to me, once we determined what parcel of lands they were talking about, that was arguably the biggest angle of the story, that it's on this huge parcel of land at Union and Danny Thomas that was cleared years ago for another multi-use project.
Because it was $1 billion project when that one was announced.
Union Row, then it was called The Walk, and during neither of those phases or names was the financing lined up. And that's what the reality is.
Yeah.
It's easy to talk about projects, but there's always a lag time between the nice renderings and, the buzzwords and the hype and the elevator pitches and actually having the money to do it.
Yeah. I will say the chamber ones, even if they don't, I mean, the fact that electrolux didn't work out, that's not chamber, that's just economics
for
a period of time. Yeah, some thousands of people worked there over time. Blue Oval, obviously a huge amount of money has been spent up there. There tends to be more substance and financing versus a lot of times, I don't know if you want to chime in on this, Catherine, it's fine if you don't, but I mean, a lot of times these proposals happen, and really the proposal and the announcement is the beginning of the effort to get incentives, raise money. You know, they've got basically renderings and an option on a piece of property. I mean, so this one seemed more substantive. Any thoughts? I know you haven't been covering this.
I haven't been covering this. I am just thinking back to Union Row and how big of an announcement that was, because I did report on that however many years ago that was.
Right.
It really makes me think you do need to be skeptical of any project. Obviously, there's more weight behind it when it's with the chamber, but we've seen so many projects stall or slow or change. And so hopeful that this one goes well, but it makes me think, you need to check everything.
The other thing about this is that this is really how the process works. Remember when we were going to get a second convention center hotel across from City Hall?
Yeah, Lowe's Hotel.
A Lowe's Hotel. Members of the Tisch family, who own Lowe's and a lot of other stuff, came into town, and these were the folks who could talk realistically about it, not, the people who are trying to sell it. And a member of the Tisch family put it great. He said, okay, we know what we want the hotel to be. Next comes the financing, and that's going to tell us whether we can build it and what we can really do on the site.
We'll wrap it up, but just say, they have so far said they're not looking for any incentives. I think I have that right. They do seem to have much more of a track record in bona fides, as Mary said. There's questions about how much power use, that, it's not going to be as much as XAI. I don't think anyone has said that, but there's huge questions. And then water use, any kind of data. So we will be reporting on that. I'm sure MLK 50, I'm sure other folks will be reporting on that. We'll be doing other shows talking about that. But let's move on to the task force. And I'll start with you, Catherine. I mean, we're how many months into this? 3 months, 4 months, it feels like?
2.5.
2.5, okay. Like I said,
so close.
Right, so close. This is the running total of fact-checking that Bill has done for me in 15 years. I've fact-checked him 5 times. He's fact-checked me over 1,000. 2.5 months, Catherine. Thoughts on where we are, what's going on, what you're hearing?
Definitely the task force is ongoing, and they have definitely amped up personnel, as we know, and I know the Daily Memphian has reported. What we've been seeing the most is these traffic stops, this traffic stop initiative led by the Tennessee Highway Patrol, and then how that has rolled into things like arrests for drugs, immigration arrests, and so many more significant things than just a traffic stop, just a citation. So several times MLK 50 has gone out, and we've kind of followed these traffic stops around. We've done it in Hickory Hill, we've done it in Berkeley, a couple other neighborhoods, and just seeing that a simple traffic stop for something like a taillight out can lead to an immigration detainment. So these seemingly small things leading to these really, really severe consequences. And then, of course, there's also a lot of talk about the jail, which I know y'all have reported on extensively, and how long-lasting issues have really been exacerbated by the increase in the people who are being held in the jail.
We also did a story, I guess we should go back actually to the interview we did last week with Bill. And sometimes interviews have some news. Sometimes interviews have like 10 headlines. And last week, I think it was with, you can fact check me on that too, with Mayor Lee Harris, County Mayor Lee Harris. He talked about a million things, and we'll kind of come back to that. And people can get the full video online at WKNO.org or at Daily Memphian, or search for Behind the Headlines on YouTube. But he talked about how he had seen a lot of the daily stops. He was very concerned that he hadn't seen all the photos of everyone had been pulled over, but they were overwhelmingly people of color. He was worried about the ICE component of this, but then also, and this is the strange and interesting, complicated politics of Memphis, he, like Mayor Young, is fine with the other parts of the task force, the U.S. Marshals, the law enforcement part. He said, we always welcome that. We always want more. We have a crime problem. Your thoughts on how, Mayor Harris, and again, Mayor Young was at an event for us. People get the video online at Daily Memphian, search for Mayor Paul Young, and he talked about, look, parts of this are really good for Memphis, whether or not we agree with that, but everyone in government, virtually everyone, most people are real concerned or uncertain what's going on with ICE. So, thoughts?
Yeah. Mayor Young at the seminar that we did this was a brief Q&A session that you did with him. He has outlined this strategy with an increasing amount of detail as this goes on. And basically, it's that he wants the task force to focus on violent crime, serving warrants, responding to violent crime. And he does not want the task force doing immigration stuff. If they do it, he wants to keep it at the lowest level that he can keep it, to the extent that, as he told you at the event, if he looks at the numbers in the morning and sees a big batch of arrests under this heading called administrative, which is federal bureaucrat for immigration arrest, he gets on the phone and calls them and in effect says, hey, do you guys need something to do? Because we've got violent crime here, here, and here to respond to instead of doing this.
We also had a story, I don't know if you want to chime in on this, or any part of this, Mary, but Sam Hardiman did a story that kind of looked back to a forgotten, it wasn't secret, but it was announced in Operation Viper in the spring, a big federal task for U.S. Marshals, FBI, all of that. They had, 160 people to investigate. More than half of those people were arrested by early September. 489 total arrests, 131 federal indictments from this operation. These operations have happened a lot in Memphis over time. That was the one that made some news because Kash Patel, FBI director, said something about it.
Yes, because he had sort of mentioned it sort of obliquely on a Fox News segment. We're going to do something there. But Viper was led by the FBI. They came to town, like you said. MPD gave them a list of about 160 people that they wanted investigated. And from there, over that summer, they saw about 5,000 indictments. So it's super interesting that happened so under the radar. And then, of course, the task force comes and everyone says, oh, but violent crime is already going down. And they're, it's like, okay, well, that's because we very quietly did this other thing.
We'll segue into some stories that Aaron Fleming on our staff has done and lots of people have written about the conditions at the jail and the problems at the jail. There have been, quite a few deaths in the jail just this year. But Aaron talked to 3 people who were booked and arrested and went through intake. I think all 3, help me out here, Mary, all 3 of them had prior records.
They all had prior arrests. They had all been in jail before, which I thought was very important.
Yes. And so it was not sort of this is an innocent person on the street who's been, these are people who had, they disputed their charges, but
yes, they knew the lay of the land of going to jail, right? Like it's not just someone who hasn't been to jail and is like, oh, I am shocked by these conditions. These were people who have been in jail before, so they sort of have a frame of reference. And what they said was that things are not great in jail right now, as probably they never are. But I think it's really striking to me that the jail has not been under capacity, so it's been over capacity for the past 18 months, which is just astounding. We
by hundreds of people.
Yeah. Yes.
On average.
So, I think the capacity of the jail is about 2,400, and they're at 2,800 and have been. And there's a little chart that we have. It's just straight on up. And then there is a corresponding chart about how long it's taking to book people. So you're getting people sitting in intake for days sometimes. And intake is not designed for people to be there for a lengthy amount of time. You're just sitting on a chair.
And in this case, what they described, and we've had other reports of this, I don't think this part is disputed. You've got an overcrowded intake area where people have to take turns sitting because there's not enough to stand. There's one toilet. We've had other, I think, reports where those toilets aren't working. The inmates then got into I was going to say rooms, but cells. Water not working. The water that was working was brown and had matter, something in it. Just bugs everywhere. And we talked with Lee Harris. We talked about making so much news, but in the radio portion of what we did, a little behind the scenes here we do the full interview generally with someone like Lee Harris or Paul Young or anybody who comes on. Then we stop and we do 5 minutes of radio that goes on KNO and goes in the podcast. Well, in that, that's where we asked him. We were talking about the youth detention center, Bill, that the county has taken over. Lee Harris was here talking that he feels like it's been very successful. They're making progress. They're doing a better job than the sheriff. And I think you or I thought to ask him, well, would you ever want to do that with the jail? And he said, yeah. And he said, maybe I'm even open to a private prison contractor, which is, he said, he's been opposed to his entire life, but that to him is how bad the conditions are at the jail.
Yeah. And I mean, the accounts that Aaron wrote were very vivid.
Yeah.
And again, people who you might say are not easily impressed by bad conditions in a bad jail. This is like, yeah, I've been to jail before. This is much worse than that. A part of the jail that, according to these accounts, is condemned.
Yeah.
It is not habitable, is being used.
Yeah. Thoughts on the jail?
Yeah, it really strikes me how these problems have been going on for years. I reported on jail deaths back when I was at the Commercial Appeal. In 2024, there was a death in the jail where the autopsy found that the man's body was infested with insects. These have been problems, but now they're so much worse because the capacity has increased. And what really strikes me is that the leadership behind the task force had all of this information at their fingertips, that the jail was a very, very bad place already, and still made the decision to start filling it up even more.
Yeah, how do we, this is always a quandary for all of us, but for I'll go to Mary on this, is people in the comments on the Daily Memphian, people on social media who are saying, well, don't commit crimes and you won't have to experience that. Or, look, you're the one who was in this incident. Now, these people were not convicted, so we have to say that. Mm-hmm. But how do we reconcile that for people listening, saying, well, these people, if they just driving down the road at 35 miles an hour with their tags, they're not going to get picked up. This isn't going to happen.
Right. Well, I think, you are right to say first, everyone is innocent until proven guilty. So there's that. And I understand where some of the commenters are coming from. But really, anyone can find themselves in the jail on any day, depending on just things going not your way. Sorry, that's just how it is. And quite frankly, everyone has constitutional rights. And the jail is run by Shelby County, and Shelby County has a responsibility to make sure that the people in its care are safe, regardless of any other factors. So that's what I say.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah, no, go ahead.
I can chime in as well.
Yeah, please do.
I do want to add, though, we have seen people being taken to the jail for traffic violations. There was a Vecindarios 901 volunteer who was taken to Jail East, the women's jail, because they said she was too close to the stop she was observing. So people have been taken to jail for very, very seemingly minor reasons. Also, I think if we think about what we as a society call the purpose of jail, it's to ensure that people who are not safe for the community are not out in the community, and it's to ensure that people show up for court, which there's also bail and a host of other things that can be done that are not really being done or are being restricted by the Republican legislature, that are resulting in more people being held in the jail, which is not the intent of having jails in our system.
Bill, you were going to say?
People are going to jail, as Catherine said, for going 1 mile over the speed limit. I mean, that's just the reality of what has happened in this task force. And people who comment, who say, well, if you're not doing anything wrong, then you have nothing to fear. Well, there is a significant body of evidence that when it comes to immigration arrest, that people are being stopped because they have darker skin, because they don't speak English. That's the reality of what is happening. So if you are in this country illegally, or if you're in this country legally, either way, you might be afraid to go out because you're going to be stopped.
Yeah. I should say, too, Floyd Bonner, the sheriff, and the sheriff has the responsibility for the jail, disputed some of the things that we had in Aaron's story, and we wrote about that. And he has been, said that many of these deaths that have happened have been, look, people die, people come in with really poor health, people come in with drug addiction, all of that. So he has pushed back, just to be fair, on all that. I think the other element of this that is always interesting to me, and I'm not trying to take away from the human element, is the county is just setting itself up for a massive lawsuit or
Yes.
set of lawsuits.
Yes.
I mean, that is the thing we talk about in the
Yes.
newsroom a lot, that just on a purely practical level, there is a massive risk of lawsuits, and that's costly. You know, the horror, bear with me, the horror of Tyre Nichols on a personal level, we all saw the video, is first and foremost there. But there's also a multi-$100-million lawsuit that could potentially bankrupt the city of Memphis. I mean, those things come as parts of poor work in the criminal justice system that sets the system up, sets the city, the county, local government up for lawsuits and trouble.
Before the task force set foot in the city, elected leaders at the county level were already talking about the specter of a federal takeover of the jail before any of this started, and it's not unprecedented. The jail, at times over the last 4 decades of its life, has been under federal court monitoring several times as a result of just the conditions that we're talking about right now.
And again, I would encourage people to go back if you're interested, whether or not you agree with him. Just Lee Harris talking about the way they're trying to run the youth detention center now and the way they're trying to do that, and as they took it over from the sheriff, as well as his concerns, and it'll be in the podcast, or you can get it, I think, in Bill's article. It's probably linked there, about his concerns about the jail and the county potentially taking that over. It's all very interesting. We've got about 5 minutes left here, though, and one thing I wanted, it's a kind of hard pivot here, but to the library and the workers there. You did a story, Bill's done some stuff too, but I'll start with you, Catherine, on potential unionization of library workers.
Yes, so the library workers, their desire to unionize, their campaign to unionize is really in motion right now. They have a bit of a two-part issue. They need to be moved from being appointed workers, which is usually what you have for like your division heads in the city, to being civil service workers. So that portion of their campaign, Councilman J.B. Smiley has an ordinance. It's, I believe, going to first reading soon. And it is going to, if it passes council, put a referendum before the Memphis voters to decide if library workers should be considered civil service workers. The other component is they want to unionize, which is something they can do if they are civil service workers. They have filed their cards with Communication Workers of America. They have the majority needed, and they've gone to the city and said, hey, we want to unionize here. Are you going to recognize us? So there's been a lot of motion, a lot of movement on that campaign.
Which groups, I mean, obviously we talk a lot and write a lot about the police union, huge union, the firefighters union, EMTs are within, if I'm looking at Bill or Catherine here, are within that. What other groups are unionized within the city or county?
You have a lot of the craft employees, like plumbers, things like that, who work for the city. There are, I'm trying to think, impasse, I think last year there were 6 unions that went to impasse, but that wasn't all of them. So maybe about a dozen different employee groups.
And then, of course, there's teachers union. There's actually 2 teachers unions. Am I right about that? Or is there still just...
Yes, but that deals with the school board.
With the school board. Other thoughts on this, on unionization? It's
one,
small, but it's kind of emblematic of something.
Well, also, when Catherine says these are appointees, they are appointed by the mayor.
Yeah.
So that's the change that you're talking about that has to go through the charter change amendment. The attorneys are already telling the city council, if you make them civil service employees, they have to reapply for their jobs and take the civil service exam. Library employees have been civil service before and been appointed, but they were appointed by the library board.
Yeah.
So look for some amendments before the third and final vote on this.
Mm-hmm. Just a couple minutes left. I thought, although I sort of dread it on a personal level, we'll do this show, then we've got a show next week with MIFA and county services talking about just them dealing with the needs around this time of year with federal budget cuts and so on. Maybe one more show before holidays. But as we go into January, Bill, it's a big election year locally. What's on deck for people? And maybe if we have a second, we'll talk with Mary a bit about how we're going to be covering it. We know how on the show and then how in the Daily Memphian. But what all is up? That's the test.
All right, December 22nd is when candidates can begin to check out qualifying petitions to actually get on the ballot, starting with the May 5th county primaries.
Okay.
This will be new this year because we will have school board primaries, and as things stand now, all 9 seats on the Memphis and Shelby County Schools Board will be on the ballot next year, pending a legal challenge. Yeah. Past that August, you have state and federal primaries and the county general elections in August, the folks who win the primaries in May. November, state and federal elections, what politicos call the midterms.
Okay. And some of those key races include county mayor, Lee Harris is termed out, the assessor, the trustee, all those. County clerk, right? County clerk. Wanda Halbert is termed out.
Yes.
Also, all those positions are termed out. Sheriff, yes, of course. Thank you. Sheriff.
And all 13 county commission seats, 7 of the 13 county commissioners will not be seeking re-election.
Because they're termed out by and large.
6 because of term limits. 1 has served 1 term and wants to run for clerk.
Okay. And then what portions of the legislature are up, right? Is it
yes,
a third
all,
or so?
All of our House seats, all 99 and there, and half of the state Senate.
Okay. Well, we'll be doing shows. We're talking about election and debates and so on, and we'll be doing a lot of coverage in Daily Memphian. But that is all the time we have this week. If you missed any of the episode, you get the full episode online at WKNO.org or the Daily Memphian or YouTube. Again, mention past shows with Lee Harris, also Interim Superintendent Roderick Richmond, Justin Pearson, Steve Cohen, running against each other for the federal seat. All that, WKNO.org, or download the show as a podcast. Thanks very much, and we'll see you next week.